Hello, my name is Aqueasha Martin-Hammond, an assistant professor of HCI at IUPUI. I am presenting today on behalf of my co-authors, Barsa Tandukar and Pooja Vazirani, both recent graduates of our HCI Master's Program. Today I present our paper entitled Advocacy Through Design, Partnering to Improve Online Communications and Connections in a Life Plan Community. I will start with the motivation for this work. At HCI and design research, we have long studied user involvement in design and the design process. Being able to understand forms of participation can be key for democratizing design, especially in community-based settings. Yet, we are still learning how participation and non-participation shape design, the design process, and our understanding of different communities. In this paper, we share our experiences partnering with a life plan community to improve the design of an internal resident-led website, managed mainly by older adult residents. In the initial stages of our design processes, where we were conducting formative studies, we observed different forms of participation by different residents in the community. Based on these observations, in our paper and this talk, we provide insights about the types of users that participated, the changes they advocated, and the design tensions that emerged. From this work, we build on work examining how participation and non-participation by different types of users shape the design process. We first start by clarifying our partnership and our participatory approach. Involved in the partnership were ourselves, the university researchers, a small resident committee tasked with making recommendations on behalf of the larger resident body, and technical staff that approved changes and coordinated with the vendor. For this project, our role was to act as a neutral voice that provided an objective evaluation. Our formative studies included two phases, a remote questionnaire and a set of focus groups and interviews that were guided by the MUST method for participatory design. The MUST method was chosen based on its specific emphasis on sustainable design within an organizational context. Questionnaires and focus group and interview topics centered on residents' use of the website, likes, dislikes, and envisioned changes. We received 126 total questionnaire responses. 89 responses were complete and 37 were partial, mainly from what we later found to be infrequent and non-users. Most of our questionnaire participants were between 75 and 84 years of age, or 85 years of age or older. Participants were mostly female, and 12 participants reported disabilities. We conducted 7 on-site focus groups and 3 interviews. Interviews were provided as an option to accommodate residents that felt more comfortable in a one-on-one setting and that had schedule conflicts. In total, we had 46 residents that participated in interviews or focus groups. Demographics for focus groups and interviews were similar, with the majority of participants being 75 years of age or older and female. 12 participants reported disabilities. To reflect on the types of participation observed by older adult residents, we asked 3 questions. First, what were the characteristics of those residents that participated? Second, for those that participated, what contributed to their participation? And third, what design tensions emerged due to the involvement of different types of users? We will discuss our findings at a high level here, but for more detail, please read our paper. We found that participants fit roughly into 3 groups. Most were active frequent users that use the website often. We also observed infrequent users that use the website but limited their use for various reasons, such as finding the website difficult or preferring other methods. We also had non-users participate, which mainly provided feedback about their preferences for other methods. What contributed to residents' participation? From the data, we identified 3 types of advocates based on participants' responses. We note that these types are not meant to be neat categories, but represent themes that emerge from our data. The first type of advocate we identified was what we label innovators. These advocates accounted for the majority of participants and often focused their feedback on how we might change the website's design. The next type of advocate we observed was the disruptor. These participants mostly reported partial use or disenfranchisement, sharing that they would like to use the website or use it more often, but currently they face major challenges that would need to be resolved. Therefore, their feedback seemed to emphasize the need to change current design thinking processes and to include different voices in the design process. The last type of advocate we identified was the protester. These residents' feedback focused mainly on sharing that they were non-users and noting the potentially negative impacts a full move to online communication might have on the inclusion of those that preferred not to use the website. So what design tensions emerged as the result of participation of these different types of residents? The first set of tensions we encountered were due to varied opinions between users and non-users on improving access to information and resources at the LPC. Some users, such as S18, felt that bringing more non-users into the fold of using the website would improve things overall. Whereas other users, such as P34, felt that emphasizing website use was counterproductive and could lead to situations where some were excluded. The second tension that emerged was related to who controlled the website's content. Some residents felt that a dedicated web manager was needed instead of the current resident-led approach that relied heavily on volunteers. However, others worried that reducing resident involvement and accountability might limit their voice in discussions of how they wanted to craft their online presence. In the quote, residents discussed the pros and cons of hiring someone versus the residents' abilities to continue to shape how they wanted to be presented and the content imported to them. The last tension we identified emerged between some older and newer residents. Because of the significant resident involvement in managing and shaping the website, some older residents had developed shared tribal knowledge around certain naming conventions and content. However, some newer residents were concerned that because the website was not consistent with broader web design standards, that it might not be welcoming to those that were not aware of the shared language. In the quote, the participants discussed the challenge with understanding terminology on the website. So what did we learn about forms of participation in design? How did different participation from older adult residents shape our design process? I will now discuss how our work builds on prior work on understanding participation in design, advocacy, and design with older adults. I will share brief highlights, but please read our paper for the full discussion. While the main goal of our study was to examine how to improve the design of a website, we found that our approach opened broader conversations about participation in design and non-technology use. In some ways, our study became a platform for differing voices to share their experiences and desires as non-users. The participation of different users also allowed us to better understand the socio-technical environment in which the website existed. Our findings emphasize the importance of understanding how a technology intervention can morally and pragmatically impact potential users and non-users. Aligned with other studies of PD with older adults, we found that examining non-participation helped us to democratize design even in the early stages of design, which allowed us to understand users' perspectives more broadly. Because of the different types of participation in our study, we were also able to better advocate for users. In our process of documenting and sharing results, we included undesigned implications, a concept coined by Barmer and Silberman that highlights situations in which you may consider not designing a technology. Participants were also able to use the design process to advocate on behalf of themselves by building empathy and providing alternative voices regarding how technology might impact them. As we learned more from residents through the study, we also had to continue to critically reflect on where design could and could not address their challenges. Our approach and the allyship of supportive staff helped to mediate and were key for developing a trusted relationship with residents and for moving forward our recommendations. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Thank you to our participants and community partners for sharing their experiences. Please contact me if you have any questions.